Hello and welcome to another episode of the Don't Give a Ruck podcast.
Got pulled over by the police for speeding.
Oh my God.
Andy, for some reason, decides he wants to flip the car. So he's there flipping this little Fiat.
And he went, Fitzy, he said, you need to retire.
No, I look back on that time in Wales was pretty remarkable period of their life.
The All Blacks are expected to win, and not only expected to win, but to do it with panache.
By the time I got offered a contract, I'd already signed for France.
We found him unconscious in someone else's tent.
Anyway, Paul, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the Don't Give a Ruck podcast. I'm really looking forward to looking back at your career, especially the Lions tour of 1997. Whenever a Lions tour is on the horizon, do you still get the butterflies in your stomach?
Yeah, definitely. All around selection. I guess it starts there, doesn't it? About a year out, where people are beginning to start picking their test team, which I think is ridiculous. Even at this stage, I couldn't get anywhere close to a test team. Okay, you put 15 names down, but I know there'll probably be 6 or 7 of those, maybe 5 or 6 anyhow. It'll be different when it comes to it. And that'll be the sign of a good tour, because it means they're competitive and everyone will be happy they're getting a fair shot. But yeah, you look at a lot of the names that didn't make it as well, especially here, in Leinster with Sexton and James Ryan and Ringrose, guys who would have been probably the three guys who'd have been up there to travel back last year. So it's it's the excitement is certainly building, and especially South Africa. This was the only tour I went on, and I'll say it's the best of the tours. Unfortunately, it'll be very compromised for the players with the COVID restrictions, and I think the professional era anyhow, and the traveling fans and the camera phones and all that. It sort of took a bit out of the touring since we were there in '97. But when it comes to having a bit of fun along the way too.
You only needed one big camera for that documentary, and that's all you needed. That was absolutely brilliant. We'll get onto that later. But I think it's safe to say, the Lions are special, whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, whether you're a fan. And we've all got memories, good or bad, of specific moments on tours. But what was your outlook of the Lions prior to 1997? Because I believe your brother went on the 93 tour of New Zealand?
Right. My brother Richard went in 93. He was called up as a replacement for Ian Hunter, got injured quite early on the tour, and he went over. My memories were I think it was just after my college exams, watching the test series there at about 2 or 3 in the morning. Bleary-eyed watching it. And then next tour you're on the plane yourself. So it was quite a bit of a it was a seismic change. You're going to, it was like reality. That's the Lions. What am I doing here? Last time I was a college student on a couch somewhere in some student accommodation watching it. I suppose that tour coming back, my brother wouldn't have had had very fond memories, but said the tour was very disjointed, divided between the Saturday and the midweek side, and certainly in '97 when we went with a number of players, obviously from that tour and the previous Australian tour, were very adamant that everyone got a free go, that we all bonded together. So I think it was a lot of that experience. And also having the likes of Fran and Geach and Jim, who'd been all there before, and they realised that a happy camp is one where everyone has a fair shot at it, and I think they certainly did that. And of course, we had, I think, some great quality throughout that squad.
And looking back at that '97 Lions tour, it was just special for so many reasons. It was the first pro-era Lions tour. It was the first Lions documentary, and they've made so many since, but that's still the best one. And of course, it was the first time the Lions had faced a World Championship side who had won the World Cup. Can you remember the coverage around that tour? Because as you've seen, if you saw the squad announcement a few weeks ago, it's absolutely crazy these days, isn't it? What was it like back then?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't like that. Very disappointing for me in that I didn't get selected initially in the squad. And we were talking about selection for the Lions and speculation. The one thing I've said, it comes down to the last couple of weeks before, and the last Six Nations game, the last big game, and I think there was a lot of calls that Gatti went with, which were literally on the last week. Is that current form, which I think is a bit unfair, but it's amazing how the minds, when it's a really tight decision like that someone has a big game in a team that's winning, a team that's losing, a guy can't perform as well, and then he gets out. So it's very tough with there's more competition there than any other year, again, with regards to the quality that's throughout the 4 countries. So yeah, it's been very. Yeah, so coming back to the selection, I had been told through the club and Saracens at the time that I was very much being earmarked to go on the tour, and then we lost to Scotland, and in an unknown Tommy Smith. Really, at that stage, I was up against. There wasn't much difference in the scrum, but they won the game. It was disappointing. We'd have been favourites, as I said, even though we never seemed to win a Murrayfield. And there's a number of us in the Irish setup that lost out on the back of that being the last Six Nations game. So I was very disappointed, but thankfully only 2 days in, I got the call up. And and I guess it was a huge advantage for me in that it gave me a real chip on the shoulder. I had to prove people wrong. I still had the belief in myself. And even though Jason Leonard and Di Young had both played in Test series before, I didn't think I'd get in because of my lack of experience and at my age, but I like I suppose most players there, I had the belief in my own ability, and that little chip on the shoulder to prove them wrong for not selecting me in the first place, it does help, especially in the front row.
Yeah, was it Peter Clohessy who missed out?
The Claw that's right. Yeah, so he was there, and he'd been so he'd got the nod. He'd been playing down in Australia and come back, but so I wasn't. Obviously, that was made it even more more of a driver for me to prove some selectors wrong.
Yeah, but also it must have been amazing, having not been selected and then coming into the squad later on, and then you're there to enjoy it, but you're also there to stamp your mark down on the Test team as well. Was that your outlook straight from the very beginning? I want to get in that Test side.
No, not really. I just wanted to perform for the Lions. It really was. I didn't think I would get that chance, and I was because it was 3 tight heads. I was getting, and I was very much the junior called up last. I wasn't really getting a lot of opportunities where they were looking at the other 2, Jason and Di, as the starters. So for me, it was just make sure you perform as well as you can for the Lions and don't leave anything behind you, and prove do it for the jersey and the teammates as well. And whether it's your club team, your provincial team, whatever, national team, Lions, I think it's always the same. You go out there and you're playing for your teammates, and the bond, I think, that was within that group in '97 made that commitment by all the players even greater, and the confidence, and that if you make an error, you can the team will be there to back you up as well, and find that extra couple of percent, which Jim Telfer was great at.
Without trying to make you sound old, Paul, I was only 1 during the '97
Thanks for that.
I think you're the same age as me that I am now. But you're doing better than I am. You were a bloody lion at the age of 25. But thanks to that famous Living with the Lions documentary, the younger generation have now been able to really see the Lions for what it was, and the camaraderie between of that particular group. I think you said in one piece that the first person that you met at the hotel was John Bentley. What a player to have on your tour, in terms of the camaraderie. Of course, you had the great Doddy Weir as well. Was it hard to differentiate between having that lads holiday feel and being on a really hard rugby tour, or did Jim Telfer sort of toe the line between the two and say we're here to win? Yeah,
well, there was one thing which management wanted, and I think it's different to a national tour because you're coming together, guys got to get on, so the social side is incredibly important on the Lions tour, more than any other tour. Also, when you're used to maybe a 3 or 4 week tour, this is a 6, 7, 8 weeks we were together. Maybe 6 weeks in South Africa, maybe 10 days before we went out. And you see it at World Cups as well. Teams that aren't enjoying themselves start falling apart and don't perform to the top of their ability. I think that's one of the things why Ireland haven't performed in some World Cups, that they've just they haven't been enjoying themselves as much. And I came back to the amateur era where we were trained as professionals, but we're amateur, but it was still fun on tours. And the same with the guys from Scotland, England, Wales. So we had that, the amateur ethos to enjoy ourselves, but also have a bit of crack, have a bit of fun. But also when it came to training, that it was, it was at such a high level. And, we were going to, to South Africa, where we were rated as not having a chance. So we knew that every game, the South African provinces were very strong back then. And, every game was a big physical task, and the fear factor of what would happen if you're undercooked going in, and probably the fear factor of Jim Telfer on your back as well.
I just couldn't imagine Warren Gatland sitting in the stand and then telling somebody behind him to shut the up or something because he's arguing with him or something like that. And that's that South African crowd. The Lions were almost hated when they over there. I remember there was one where I think Neil Jenkins was going for goal in one of the provincial games, and you've got a South African fan in the crowd going fucking miss. It did seem like the South African supporters hated the Lions, and it was that hatred there.
Well, very passionate, I'd say.
Yeah. That's the political way of saying it.
I wouldn't say that, especially in the high veld. The Afrikaans are very physical, can be very intimidating. Huge men. That's the players. The supporters are bigger again.
Yeah. And
in their army khakis, and they're got the rum inside them at match time, arriving in on their buckies, and there can be a little bit abusive, all right. But that all adds to it, doesn't it? It adds to the atmosphere. Certainly didn't affect anything on the pitch, and you want that sort of confrontational environment to play in, just to get the most out of you. And again, I talked about a personal chip on the shoulder. Even for the team, it was the same thing. The media writing you off, everyone telling you you're useless and blah 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 blah. And then bit by bit, it was just about earning the respect of the South African public, and I think by the end of it, we had.
What was the build-up like? Because I've seen a few of the clips. Obviously, as supporters, that's what we can base it off. There was a few sort of team bonding sessions, and did you go for a drink prior to the tour, all as a squad?
Well, we were about a week or 10 days. I can't remember exactly how long. Maybe it was just a week, and then we were down in Durban for another week training before the first game. We were doing all this team building, and we got these guys in. Yeah, it was a bit of fun being had. And then the night before we flew out, Fran said, "Come on, we're going down to a local pub," and just went down there, and beers were flowing. And I think there was more team bonding done than the week of all this team building events of building rafts and all that. I think just one evening in the pub seemed to manage to bond everyone together, and then back to the hotel, and we had a wonderful time.
Yeah. Well, when you said earlier, mind about teams not enjoying themselves on World Cups that don't do well. I think England enjoyed themselves on the 2011 World Cup, didn't they? That didn't go too well for them either.
Yeah. Well, you'll find other teams do, but they can do it more discreetly.
Yeah.
Well, it's always very difficult for the English team because, and in fact, on the Lions tour, sometimes we try and avoid some of especially the big name English players, because the last thing you want is the paparazzi behind you, even back then. Exactly. So
nobody told Mike Tyndall, did they?
Yeah, well, in Ireland, in 2011, I believe the Irish team were in the exact same place in a worse state the week before. So.
That's why they lost.
They managed to get away with it. So that's just some touring skills that you probably require when you're out. And in fairness to Tins, he'd normally be very good at quite old school himself. Very good.
On the coaching staff, obviously you had Cotton, who was the team manager. He seemed like he was going to take no shit from anyone. You had Jim Telfer and Ian McGeechan. Was there a case of good cop, bad cop between them two? Was Jim Telfer the bad cop and Ian McGeechan the sort of in between guy?
Yeah, like Fran not much is people don't say a lot about Fran. Fran was always in the background, but he was sorting everything out. He had to work with two players, which I can't let you know what it was against. But it was the once on tour, and that was because of some loaded magazine were down to try and do an expose on us, and a couple of lads got anyhow. But that was it. That was it. Fran just knew, I've sat next to some of the lads from the 70s on tour, and they've got up to all sorts of pranks and stuff as well. So shenanigans. So it was a bit of a. He knew that the lads need to enjoy themselves. It's a Lions tour. The ones where you don't is when the lines don't go well. So he set that scene, and then you had Jim was really the drill sergeant, tough cop, good cop, bad cop, whatever you might call it. That was certainly the way they played out. Geach, it didn't overcomplicate it. Very very simple offloading, diamond formation, support play, stretching defense. It was all quite simple, which is when you're coming together from 4 different cultures. I think is the way you should go. I think sometimes you need a philosophy in the game and the way you play, because 9 times out of 10 there's going to be a little error and things don't go perfectly. So it's how you react to that. And I think we had that. Now, we didn't play that great running rugby in the first 2 tests. We did in the third and lost. But throughout the tour, there was some amazing rugby played. Then if you put it against some of the rugby today, it looks maybe defenses aren't quite as good, but
the offloading was unbelievable. I think it was either the first, second test. The offloading was just, I just couldn't believe it, because even maybe between 97 to 2005, 2005 to 2015, rugby looks completely different all the way, doesn't it? But you cannot beat that offloading game, can you?
Yeah, and you know what? Geach brought that from 74, so
exactly.
So far back it came. But it just shows you, I think a lot of coaching come in and they try and put their stamp on it by giving too much detail to players. But I think if you can empower the players, get them to have the right skill base, and everyone's running off the same hip. If someone's going to run, put a bit of a step on it, take a soft shoulder off low. Where you're going to be trailing, and you can time your lining. And one of the big things there I thought is our alignment running. Teams nowadays, they're also flat, so you tend to overrun it if you don't have the perfect pass, and hard to offload. But it was all about a bit deeper, running harder, and I think that game plan really suited on the hard ground.
I think you only lost or dropped 1 game prior to the test series against Northern Transvaal, I believe. I think it was 35-30, something like that. I think the Lions come back towards the end. But prior to the first test, it still gets played every 4 years now. The Jim Telfer, when he's got the forwards meeting, and it still gives me goosebumps now. I couldn't have only imagined what you guys were like. Can you remember that? Very vividly.
Yeah, I was sitting right next to Jim, and I had my head down here because I didn't have a visor in these COVID times. Jim was getting a bit. What an orator! It was a fantastic speech, but the words, yes, the way it was all put together, but his delivery, the passion in the man to win is just huge, and that there was an osmosis effect into the forwards in particular during that tour when it came to scrum sessions. I remember kickoff sessions. We did 2 or 3 kickoffs, and next thing he's in lambasting us, and he's saying, "You can get, we weren't running quick enough. We're going flat out. What are you on about?" But we devised a thing where we go another meter or 2 back, so we'd be hitting it even faster when we hit it on kickoffs. And you did. It was these tiny little percentages that it just got out. And when you look at the second test in particular, that's what it was. It was just that extra bit of fight when we were probably outplayed in that game. It was that extra bit of fight, and just doing everything to the top of our ability.
A lot was made. A lot was made around the scrum at that time, because obviously, yourself, Tom Smith, and Keith Wood. That's quite a small front row, and obviously you had the big second rows in behind you of Jeremy Davidson and Martin Johnson. What was those first 2 scrums like? Because I remember, I think you were given against the big Ulster Rant.
Yeah, and I'd put my hand up for that one. Do you know what? I've been playing midweek. I haven't played any Saturday games till then, and we were wreaking havoc on the provincial scrums. after playing a few years against England, against the English, you could feel the weight of the English back five.
Yeah.
So, Tim Rodber, Lawrence, Richard Hill,
yeah.
I John O second row, and I was going into that, and I decided to power scrummage.
Yeah,
Not
1-on-1.
recognizing the fact that Oz Durant was about 4 or 5 stone heavier and a powerful man, and they also had a back five, probably bigger than the English back five. So yeah, we went to hit and chase, and we had been doing a bit of that, and we came off second best twice. And then I was 2 penalties in, and that was in about 2 or 3 minutes into the game. I'm in under the stick going, this is just going to go horribly wrong. Jono didn't say anything. He just looked over at me, and that Jono look, and I just thought, he's scarier than that bunch. I just went out and I said, look, I've just been a bit arrogant. I've been a bit stupid. Power. I didn't not playing to our strengths. There's a lot of the media would say at the time, and probably been translated through, that it was all about the scrum height and that we were short. That isn't technically correct. What it was we were, scrummaging. You were allowed to back then, and which you should be allowed now, as a form of wrestling once it doesn't collapse or go up. Yeah. It's about negating your opponent's pushing position. Now we always had an advantage in the Northern Hemisphere to the Southern Hemisphere in that regard, and it's something that's been taken out, unfortunately. But that's basically what we started doing. We started putting them into uncomfortable positions. They're much taller side. It was bending in, twisting around, and once we started doing that, we got the upper hand really for the 3 tests after that. So but wow, it was a very uncomfortable start. I was nearly getting a taxi being called for me. I think 3 minutes into that.
Good.
I'm gone. See you. Bye. Yeah, it's been fun.
It must have been it must have been terrifying though, because we've seen it on the 2009 tour where Phil Vickery, we didn't make the change early on, and we could see that the beast was doing him. And Phil Vickery's a great technical scrummager. Do you know what I mean?
Phil was quite tall. He was quite high. I was down covering that test series. And even early on, you just said Phil didn't have the technical ability to get out of that. And Jones, he came on and did an incredible job. And look, Vix is, we've seen what he's done for World Cups and that, and very mobile prop. But at that stage, for that job, in fact, it's one of those ones that I'd be a bit anxious about Tyke Furlong, who's incredibly powerful guy, but with his high scrummaging, I think they might target that. Because he again is a bit like Phil, more powerful again, but with his height, he could run into a bit of difficulty there. Or else we outpower them. So.
Exactly. It's going to be a strange one, isn't it? Because I remember Warren saying on the last tour to New Zealand, it's okay if we drop a few games in the provincial games, and I think people perceived the Lions to go out to New Zealand and play quite a boring, drab 10-man rugby, but he said we have to go out there and play. What sort of game plan do you think he's going to have to negate out in South Africa? Is he going to have to revert back to the British way of playing, or perceive the British way of playing?
I don't think so. There's a few. Obviously, the physicality and the set pieces is going to be huge. Like for us, our line out was a big thing. Our line out maul, especially in the first test. I think that's what won us that game early on. We didn't get any direct tries from it, but it got us to field position, got us penalties, and got us momentum and confidence. I think that's going to be a huge thing. The line out, there's 2 games at altitude, so the flight of the ball is that much further. A lot of people say about the exhaustion levels from playing at altitude, but personally for me, it was always, if you had a scrum in the first few minutes, you were hanging out of your side anyhow. Whereas if it was 30 minutes into the game, you're flying around the place. So I as a front row, I tight end in particular, I never quite got that. The flight of the ball would be a huge thing, the long kicking, and so it's like Elliot Daly coming on board. You see that as maybe some of the thinking. Although you probably don't even need his boot, he'd be knocking them over from his own 22. God, it's so we'll look at that. physicality around the fringes, stopping their momentum, small defence, those sort of things, I think would be more important than against New Zealand. But no, I think they should be playing the same open running rugby, offloading rugby. That's where they're very strong. I think a higher tempo game will suit. I think we'll have more quality off the bench than they might have, more experience in those big games. And, there's a hell of a lot of pace we're bringing down there. We should back ourselves. The other thing is the Springboks, 2 warm-up games against Georgia.
Yeah.
They are, I think, probably more for the taking than any other Lions tour. I think this should be the easiest Lions tour, which is still bloody difficult.
It's so
a lot
weird.
Of it could be psychological, getting through. As we talked about, having been able to have a bit of fun and enjoy yourselves throughout the tour with all the lockdown restrictions.
It's so weird, isn't it? Because I remember a few years back talking to my father. We went down to the Principality Stadium to watch Wales versus South Africa, and I think Faf de Klerk made his debut that day, and we just couldn't believe how small this scrum half was. And I think South Africa were trying a load of new players, and I think this was prior to them losing to Italy in Rome. And I was saying to my father at the end of the game, 2 years out, or 3 years out, this could be the easiest Lions tour, that we've ever seen. Lions could stuff them 3-0. Obviously, they're going to win the World Cup, and now he's come back full circle of. I just can't believe that I think they tried to get a friendly with New Zealand, but I think New Zealand pulled out. But I don't get why Georgia are the side that they're going to play in a 2-match series. I don't know what the thinking is behind that.
Yeah, well, I think it's just World Rugby had to be a category 2. There's couldn't get Australia, New Zealand. So it is. It's they really are. They're going to, especially the amount of players that are playing in Europe and the inability to come to camps, etc., to prepare. That's going to be very tough as well. But look, there's some great quality players.
Yeah.
If they've obviously got the confidence of winning a World Cup. I do think about that World Cup though. They had such an easy run in compared to England, who I think were spent by the time. And if Kyle Sinclair hadn't gone, who to be honest is an absolute shock to me that he wasn't brought down to South Africa. Because I could well live to regret that one, because I think if you want to play a high tempo game at that World Cup, Kyle Sinclair was playing such great rugby. But his scrummaging is really solid too. He good height, but it's his play around the park. And I was thinking it was going to be him and Furlong all day long for me. But
I think I wouldn't be surprised if they pick a lot of Sale players. Because they play in that Gallagher Premiership week in, week out. But I think you mentioned earlier about the kicking in South Africa, going back to 97. Were you quite fortunate to have Neil Jenkins in the side? Because it just seemed like he was kicking them from everywhere. And especially in that second test.
He was going out doing 100 kicks and doing 100. Yeah. He was missing about 1 every 200 or 300 practice kicks. Yeah. Something crazy like that. He was in training. It was fantastic. But like we took a risk. They've missed a lot of kicks with Hannibal at 10, but Hannibal was a great running, attacking, defending number 10. And we put Jenks in there to do a job. Now, Jenks wasn't the greatest man under a high ball at the back, and we leaked points because of that defensively at times. But it was decided that to have him there was more vital, which it proved to be absolutely so. I think Jenks could have probably done the job at 10 as well. But we were, I guess, struggling for a bit of form at 15 at the time back there. But he was. We wouldn't be chatting today probably if it wasn't for Jenks knocking them over like he did.
It's amazing. It's amazing because people go on about the Guska drop goal, don't they? But the what was it? The 5 kicks, the penalty kicks that Jenks had kicked before then was unbelievable. It was like when we played England in '99. And at Wembley, and he was like a machine. He was just like boo, boo, and they're just it's amazing.
Yeah, no, he was great, and a great tourist as well. Most humble, nicest guys around, and great to have him involved. Still, he's one of my favorite people from that tour for sure.
Yeah, is him being sick before the kickoff put you off?
Do you know that was him that was dry retching, and everyone thought it was me.
I know
because I actually did a little. I used to have a lot of anxiety before games, and sometimes before I'd have a little Chunder, but he was dry retching us. And there's one thing about your forwards getting like that. You don't want the cool head of a place kicker to be getting there. So, but it seems to work for him. But again, he showed it how much it meant to him as well, the nerves getting to him like that. But even with that, what quality just in backbone to just go and skill and ability just to knock them over like that.
Yeah, and we mentioned Gus kicking that drop goal, and I think, was it the second test where Jenks kicks the ball straight out from the 22 and everybody's going, what's he doing? And then the ref blows his whistle. What was it like at the end of that game? The elation must have been through the roof.
It was fantastic. We didn't, they'd hit us like a steamroller. We didn't know why it was. Wow, the anger and everything from losing the game before. And, it took a long time to sink in. It's coming back, and we had a wonderful time. In around Kings Park is no better venue to have won it with regards to all the brides that were out around the stadium. And we went out and started mixing and have meeting Scott Hastings there, was in one group, and there was a lot of line supporters out at the barbecues, have a beer and something with them, and then on the bus home, and we had just a wonderful night. It was, and probably even better than that was when we got back, we flew up to a place called Vanderbilt Park, which is in the middle of nowhere, because they thought it would come down to the third test and wanted us away from any cities and the media to prepare. We ended up, we couldn't find anywhere to go out, so we were obviously going in having the second night after the series, and we found some wooden shanty shack above a garage with a Lion Lager sign, and next thing we all went in, they wouldn't believe who we were. There was two guys in army fatigues in there, big Afrikaners, and they wouldn't believe us till we were leaving until they said, "Here are the keys, just drop it, let them leave yourself." So that's South African hospitality. But it was a great way to keep us all together celebrating that. To get back to preparing for the third test.
Yeah. The Wonderwall is so synonymous with our tour, isn't it? Was that the bar that you sang that in, or was that prior?
Well, the song was given, I think they decided to have a tour song when we came together. That was always there, but then we'd start singing it after a win or whatever when we were out. And after that first test, there was very few line supporters down previous to the first test. When we ran out in Newlands, we just see all this red support out there, which was huge. And maybe not quite the same as Australia 4 years later, but this is the first time there was really a traveling crowd of visually that you could see. And so we went to I think it was a restaurant called Tequila Tecante, a Cantina Tequila, I think it was called, in Newlands afterwards, and we're there, but half the bar was all line supporters. And eating, had a few beers, and then just a big sing song erupted up, and that was it. So it was a great show. I like that song too. And I like some of their stuff, but that one in particular, I think it's a fantastic song.
Yeah. Prior to the second test, I think Ian McGeechan said, in 20 years' time, if you win this series, you pass each other in the street, and there'll just be a look. Do you still keep in touch with many of that touring party 24 years on?
Certainly do. And I guess one of the things about having success is we tend to get invited along to do a lot of corporate speaking together. So that's great. And I've been involved in the media as well. So you get to a good crossover to see the lads. And there was only 4 Irish involved in that. It was Keith Woods, Jeremy Davis, and myself, and Eric Miller. So we'd see each other a bit. Jeremy I'd be in touch with a lot, and then but guys like John Bentley, Doddy, Gibbsy, Jenks, get to see them quite a lot, and it's great. And anytime you meet up, Lol, any of the guys, Tom Smith. Unfortunately, it's a few of the occasions now have been fundraisers for Tom and Daddy's charities, but still great to see everyone. And he was bang on about when you see someone, that's it. Yeah, and the relationships throughout the squad, there wasn't one unharmonious, Yeah, there was a rivalry. Don't get me wrong, between players, especially in the same positions before the Test series. But no, everyone's very tight. still to this day. Yeah.
And will you be out in South Africa this summer?
Unfortunately, no plans yet.
Oh no.
Yeah, no.
Because you've done quite a few of the Lions tours, haven't you, for Sky Sports, haven't you?
I have, yeah. No, I did. I missed out. I was asked to go to the last one to New Zealand, but my wife was had twins arriving in August
amazing.
3rd, so I wasn't going anywhere for that. I wouldn't want to do it, but what a wonderful tour that was. But yeah, no, I was privileged enough to work at the Australian tour before that and the South African one before that, which were absolutely fantastic opportunities and experiences.
And from the Irish point of view, I think we mentioned earlier about some of the players that have missed out. What's the reaction been over in Ireland to, Gats, Sexton not in the squad, CJ Stander not in the squad, maybe a last hurrah for him for the both of them. What's the reaction been over in Ireland?
Well, Johnny was probably the one that stood out. But other players like Ringrose, he was unfortunate with injury coming back and probably hadn't hit the form he had. I still probably would have brought him. And James Ryan. I think James Ryan has been very huge. I think he would have suited the South African game. I thought his form was very good when he came back from his injury. I think that's the biggest one. The Johnny question is, I'd always have Johnny going down there, but who are you going to leave behind? It would have, Finn Russell could light up, could become a world sensation on the hard ground down there with the way he plays. But if you do, you probably got to play him with Farrell at 12. And I think that could well be the combination if Russell goes well. And then it was down to Biggar and Sexton. And I guess one of the things was, if Johnny's going and his legacy is the Lions number 10, would the whole tour be around him, and maybe he wouldn't be the guy to go out in the Test series? Now, Johnny's a great team man, and I'm sure he'd have rolled into that. But maybe it was a deflection. A very hard call, I'd have thought. I'd certainly have liked to have Johnny there for his experience and his winning ability. He's just a winner. And the other one is Jonathan Davis. He, for me, has probably been, I think he's right up there as one of the greatest Lions of all time. And, we talk about Brian O'Driscoll and when he was left out and that, but, you see what Jonathan has done for Lions rugby and Welsh rugby. And he is to have left that experience, even if he's a midweeker and playing, looking very sharp at 12, maybe not at 13. But what a player! I was very, very surprised to see him left out.
Yeah, and I think you played under Warren Gatland in the late 90s.
That's right. Yeah, no, Gatty came in, and so had a couple of years under Gatty. Yeah.
What have you made of
the first 15-man? A 15-man lineup molds were back then in South Africa, as it happened against Western Province. We were trying that one out. Yeah, so a couple of good couple of good theories, but I think it'll work very well with Gregor in there. I think he's again, we talk about bringing the 70s into the 97 tour, the playing style. I think that'll go again. I think our culture, I think as well. For me, I think 4 countries, it really gets up my goat that there's so many international coaches here, and I know Gatty's probably been over here more longer than he's been in Wales, but for me, I would really like to see Indigenous coaches coming through in national teams, and especially the Lions when you're there. And I think there will be I'm presuming there'll be a successful tour this time, whether it's a winning tour or not. Don't necessarily judge it on that basis. From when it comes to the coaching staff, and I can see a handover to Gregor as the next Lions coach going forward, and I think he'd be excellent. In fact, I would have said he was ready for it already.
Yeah, some of the Rugby Scotland's playing is amazing. But what have you
made? Done at Glasgow from the whole way through. He brought it from the grassroots up nearly to the national side.
What have you made of Gatland's trajectory as a coach? Because you go back to Ireland, and maybe people don't have great memories of him, but when he first took over Ireland were one of these sort of nations that were maybe winning one game every 5 nations. They were almost like the Scotland of later years. And I think when he left, I think you finished joint top with England in the 6 Nations in 2002, I believe. And do you just sort of have that thing in the back of your head where where could Ireland have been if he'd taken them to a World Cup maybe?
No, I don't think we had the ability to win a World Cup. Probably under Joe Schmidt was the last time, and we sort of peaked a bit early. I think that was the closest we could have been to have the depth to go and be a serious challenger. I remember Gatti coming in, and we first game was in Paris, and where we hadn't won in ages. I did a disallowed try, which is a perfect try from a block down, which was just shown on TV. But it's funny nowadays. It would have been given. I would have been the first try since the 70s. But I think about 10, 15 minutes. There was about. This is when you didn't pull players off. Substitute, and it was Paddy Johns, Keith Wood, and myself. We had France absolutely under control, and then they scored a try in the last minute from a botched line out with the guys that had come on, and that would have won it. So that was seismic how Gatti had come in, and then I remember going to South Africa on tour with him after that, and he was always bringing in a lot of different ideas and that. Technically he was the best coach. I think when Eddie O'Sullivan came in under him, that's when they started making a lot of progress. But also it was personnel. And in the '99 World Cup, when Gatti was head coach, it's a game we should have won against Argentina, and it would have been, it ended an era after that, because there was a bit of all the overseas players got cut out from the Irish squad, and then it was just the players that were still back in Ireland, which was quite an unfair system because a lot of us were under contract and they brought this in while we were in contract. But there was a process then of young players coming through, and I think that's what led to that success in Ireland getting better and better. Especially, there was a Leinster backline of O'Driscoll, Shane Horgan,
Dennis Hickey, Kevin Maggs.
But there was a Lowe's, Henderson. So there was a lot of backs coming through as well. They were probably a bit younger, but O'Driscoll, Darcy, of course. But I think it was the O'Driscoll, Darcy, since Brendan Mullen, there hadn't been a 13. We lacked that creativity, and I think Dricko was such a force of change for that Irish team, more so than the coaching staff, in my opinion. Anyone could have gone in there with Brian on 13 and just get the ball to Brian in a bit of space. That's all they need to do, and it's a toughest game.
I don't think he's a massive fan of Gatland, is he, Dricko?
I do think he made the correct decision though. I would have had maybe Brian on the bench, but they had tried going around Australia for the previous two tests. And they had to go direct, so you went for your bigger physical centres, and it worked when they went.
And we won by 40 points.
Exactly. So but even beforehand, I was sort of saying, you know what, they're trying to go around Australia. The Australian defence is very strong at up and out, and you need to start taking them, winning the gain line. You needed power players. Now, I would have thought Brian coming off the bench would have been a great fill up. But the thing is, on Lions tour, it doesn't matter what you've done before. It's just how you performed on that tour. So you forget about the ones beforehand. And it's
amazing you say that, though, because I was just about to say the Lions got a knack of maybe turning good players into, and giving them legendary status. You look at yourself back in '97, Tom Smith, Jeremy Davidson, Matt Dawson, come from nowhere in that '97 tour to replace Rob Howley and score the try in the first test. Is there anyone that you think on this current Lions tour that's going to surprise everyone? Because I remember Stephen Ferris in 2009 come from nowhere, and he was first name on the team sheet to go on that first test, and lucky he had the bad injury. But is there anyone that you think could really break into the test team that nobody's talking about?
I quite like Gareth Davis as scrum half. I think on the hard ground, his pace, if they're going to play a high tempo game, I think he's electric, so he could be, of the three scrum halves, he's probably the more running scrum half, but I think he's, again, it depends what the pack can provide for him. Henderson, I think, is a big, he's beginning to get there. He's very dynamic. He's another one that's always stood up on Lions tours.
Dwayne Van Merwe back in his place of birth.
I see. I don't get that. Where you have one brother playing in South Africa and the other. I a bit like the Gatland thing. It's not about coaching ability or anything. You'd like to see the indigenous guy who's come up through the systems here, and I've been, the whole project player system for me. No, I believe it's his mother, isn't it? So he has a connection there. So I'm probably being a bit disingenuous on that. But he's got lots of power. But again, is it power you want to play with them? He certainly has that ability, and in tight games you don't get space. But it's very competitive, isn't it, on the wings? It's great. I'd like to have seen Johnny May is probably the one other person that I would like to see on that tour. He played very well for England, but it was quite hard to play with what was going on inside him. And his electric pace down there, I think, would have been great.
And quick prediction for the tour?
No, I think the Lions will win.
3-0?
I'd say 2-1. It might be similar to 97. And so, I think they can get the first one, get them half baked and the high vault, win on sea level, and then maybe the third one, the Boks might take that.
And before you go, Paul, is it okay if we finish with a quick fire round?
Go on.
Right. So, firstly, who's the best player that you've played with?
I always say Philippe Salah because of his age. He was 36 playing at Saracens, and his brilliance. I wouldn't mind. I've played with some brilliant the O'Driscolls, Guskus, Timmy Horan, all absolute class. Alan Bateman, Gibbsy, but Philippe Salah at 36, there's no player could match what he was doing. 111 caps. He was just, and he was such a class act as well.
Yeah,
and more importantly, one of the great guys. What do you call it? Le troisième mi-temps, the third half after the match. He was also a great man, which you always need.
That's brilliant. The best player that you've come up against
as a prop, Gary Pagel,
right,
South Africa, who did me a bit of a favor in Western Province when he destroyed Jason Leonard on that. He put Jason out of the tour. He had the misfortune. I think he was a better scrummager than Oz Durant, maybe a bit smaller, but some big battles with him against Northampton in the Premiership, and he was a powerful force.
Best friend in rugby?
Good God, I hope
many.
Everyone's going to hear this. There's so many. I'd probably still tight. We're on the lines. Probably Jeremy Davidson. We're always very tight. We'd always
Buzz.
Beer after us, Buzz. We're always, especially on that tour, we were particularly tight.
Your favorite coach?
Geach. God, it's all coming up 97. Yeah, Geach and Jim, but Geach. Any coach that picked me.
Yeah, exactly.
Geach was something special.
Yeah. Best match you've been involved in as a player?
Probably go back to the first test in the Lions in Newlands.
Yeah. Well, the second test?
We played a lot better in the first test. Wow.
It's got a few more tries.
Second one was more about hanging on. It's probably more of a cliffhanger for the fans, not for us though.
Worst drinker that you've played with?
Ooh. There's a few of those. There's a few Dave Humphreys or David Corkery drinkers, so they would have been right up there. Or someone who did and didn't.
Is there anyone that sort of, had
a that would have to be a guy called Greg Botterman from Saracens.
What a name.
Martin Gregory. So hopefully the Sarries boys get this. Martin Gregory. Two of them hiding pints everywhere when we went out.
I'll tag him in this.
Yeah, exactly.
Biggest troublemaker on and off the field?
Probably Rob Henderson, who he caused trouble by destroying a lot of us over a few pints. Yeah, trying to keep up with Hendo. Yeah.
What a centre. He was a centre, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
He went on the 2001 Lions tour and he's awesome.
He doesn't look it now.
No, doesn't he?
Sorry, Hendo.
Finally, Paul, if you weren't a rugby player, what would have been your dream job?
A professional sailor.
Really?
Sailing was probably my first love, yeah. Would have spent a lot of time sailing, instructing sailing and that. Yeah, definitely.
Well, what would you have named the boat?
It's a tough one. I've never thought of that.
You have to put that on your bucket list now, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'll let you have a think about it, and you have to message
Probably
me
something
back.
about boring.
Yeah. Well, Paul, it's been a real honour talking to you about the Lions. Even though I wasn't really, a big rugby fan at the age of 1. I still,
And you're Welsh.
Yeah, exactly.
From 6 months, I thought.
Neil Jenkins up in the wall just kicking the babies out.
Exactly.
But yeah, even though I wasn't able to sort of watch that tour, it still brings back memories from living with the Lions, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well, and I hope you look forward to the Lions tour as much as everyone else.
Yeah, likewise, Nathan. It's hope to be and great chat.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Cheers.
Have a good day, mate. Try, buddy.